I have to say it's truly my joy and privilege to be able to introduce my special friends, Eric Markow on the left and Thom Norris on the right. Eric is the one with the beautiful hair. I first met Eric and Thom more than 2 decades ago when they were living in Virginia. And even then, it seems their creative energy was so inspiring and their curiosity was unmistakable. A little history. I hope I'm not being too redundant, but Eric enrolled in a stained glass class in 1993, and then he met Thom the following year. And together they began their artistic journey by creating stained glass windows, and they pursued that for nearly 10 years. But the story, like the trajectory of many of us older, well, I consider myself older people, didn't stop there. In 2002, they began experimenting what would become their signature medium, which is woven glass. And as you'll see tonight, their exploration continues to evolve in astonishing and beautiful ways. What makes their work especially fascinating to me in particular is the combination of art and science. Both of Eric and Thom hold degrees outside the arts in biology and in chemical engineering. And you can sense those disciplines in the work and the intricacy and the structural and often gravity-defying creations. Their inspirations are equally compelling. As I remember, Eric draws deeply from his love of nature, and Thom is more inspired by the forms and functions of the materials themselves. Both have also been influenced by artists such as Georgia O'Keeffe, I think Tiffany as well. Georgia O'Keeffe's, I remember them talking about this, especially with the larger flowers, the bold forms and organic sensibility of those forms have influenced their work. So their collaboration, fueled by their shared vision, experimentation, and tremendous hard work, seems to energize every piece that they create. So as their work expanded, they outgrew their Virginia home and relocated to a beautiful contemporary home in Bowie, Maryland, surrounded by gardens and landscapes. They built a full lower level glass studio and absolutely stunning and creative space where their woven work really came to life. They debuted their first one of their woven sculptures in 2003 in Portland, Oregon, and then the first public show in Baltimore in 2004. From the very beginning, they approached their work with intention and professionalism, and I learned a lot just observing that. Even renting a high-rise apartment in New York City with expansive windows so that they could professionally photograph their sculpture for publication. I knew that was really expensive, and their name wasn't on the map yet, and yet they were investing all this. They wanted to ensure that their work would be represented at the highest level, and that commitment certainly paid off. There's distinctive woven glass sculptures, impossibly intricate and luminous, and like anything else, then captured the public imagination. Nearly 60 publications and news outlets have featured their work: Southern Living, The Robb Report, Interior Design, The Advocate, The Washington Post, Smithsonian Associates magazines. And then they also appeared, and I looked at it again tonight, the televised program CBS Sunday Morning and Fox Morning News. Their exhibitions have spanned cities across the country: Miami, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Austin, and SoFA Chicago, where I had the privilege of watching one of the sales that they had there. This couple came up and were looking at this, what it was a kimono, I think.
Kimono.
And they were looking at it and said, geez, $80,000, that was back then. And so they walked away, and another couple came up and said, we'll take it. So they missed out. Anyway, one of my personal favorites is the 5 foot tall red dragonfly, whose head articulates, and I think the wings articulate too. Is that
Yes.
right? And it seems almost alive. It rests on a wall.
You can see it in April, unless it sells people.
Absolutely beautiful. So today they live in Bowie, Maryland, with their 5 rescue cats. And in April, They've graciously invited us to visit their studio and a home. And so you will see where all this magic happens. So it's an honor to call them friends and even a greater pleasure to introduce you to their remarkable work. So, Eric and Thom.
Well, Nikki and Shayna, thank you so much for inviting us to do this. We're thrilled to be talking with you all. I don't know how we can follow what Nikki said. That was fantastic.
Very nice.
We'll support a little bit of what she said with some of our pictures. So just a quick rundown of what we're going to try to cover tonight. We wanted to start with the Markow family florist history. Eric's family goes way back to 100 years doing florists. So he'll explain that as we get there. We'll touch on our stained glass, as Nikki mentioned. And then, yes, Nikki's right. Our art inspiration is Tiffany Chihuly and Georgia O'Keeffe. Then we'll transition into our woven glass. There will be a lot of time jumps because we're going to focus on the flowers that we've done over the last 19 years. We'll touch a little bit on our kimonos, our cherry blossom branch, our spring dogwood, our samurai do have flowers associated with them as well. And then finally, we'll end with our 2 new bougainvillea vines that we made, one for a client and one for ourselves.
So when Thom and I thought about this presentation, we really thought it would be cool to focus on the flowers. And as Nikki said, we're very influenced by nature. I thought about my history and I thought about why am I so influenced by flowers? My great grandfather grew roses, flowers in Western Ukraine. He came to the United States in 1910. This is a picture of him. He's in the center. His name is Ilka. When he came over, it became Alex Markow. And then next to him is my great-grandmother, Josephine Markow. This is them in their gardens here in the 1940s. One thing that they did, they started a florist in the United States because they had all that rich knowledge of flowers and everything. They would actually have patents for carnations, gardenias. They built a big, huge greenhouse in Richmond. And the Markow Florist was started in the 1950s. And you can see that was the calendar there. They did ads in Richmond. The greenhouse was named Paul's Flowers because that was my grandfather, his son, Alex's son. There he is in the greenhouse. This is an aerial view of the greenhouse in the 1960s. This is him in 1966. That's my great-grandmother, Josephine, with all the poinsettias that they would grow at Christmas time. There she is again. And there is my mother in the greenhouse in the 1966. She worked there along with my father. On my other side, my mother's mother, this is my grandmother. And the thing I remember is all of these roses in her backyard. And so that's her roses. There's my mother and my aunt in front of all these roses, all this influence for me. This is me and my mother in 1972. I was 2 years old. You can see the flowers in the background. So I was surrounded by flowers all the time. So I knew I was going to be doing flowers at some point. We were also influenced by Tiffany, stained glass windows in churches. This is the wisteria here. And like Nikki said, when we moved in 2011 to where we are now, there was all this wisteria everywhere. It continued to influence us.
We love the way it looks.
And stained glass is something I started in 1993. I met Thom in 1994, taught Thom how to do stained glass. That was with my teacher there,
Laura Lopez in 1983.
We reunited in 2012. This is me in my very first art studio. You could see I have a very large glass collection there in the background. Very different now. We actually ended up doing stained glass in the torpedo factory. People would come and watch what I was doing. This is Wild Root here.
We would spend a lot of time looking for rondelles and geodes and things to put in the sculptures. And then we got a commission in downtown DC. This brownstone had these great big triangular windows. It was our biggest commission in the 10 years that we did stained glass. And it was called Maui Sunrise. And it took us, a couple at least 6 months to lay these up in our house and then figure out how to transport. They're 5 feet across each one in their home there. That's us doing the install. And there it is more in the morning when the sun's coming through. This also shows how influenced we are by Dale Chihuly. We love his forms. We love his color combinations and the mixtures that he does. As you guys know, he also does paintings. We've always loved his flower vases and paintings of flowers. 1999, I was on a flight with Dale. I sat next to him for the whole flight. I was actually working. I worked for United Airlines, and it was a night flight from Chicago to DC, and he was sitting in first class, and I only had one other passenger. So it was only a drink flight. So I sat next to him for the whole flight, and we chatted, talked about our stained glass things that we were doing, and he was just working on the Bellagio at the time, or he just finished it, I think. So he drew this picture on his notepad. It says, it says at the top, it says for Tom and Eric, and at the bottom it says Chihuly. It says 37,000 feet en route. October 25th, 1999. So we framed this. It's just fun to have that. The nice thing is he invited us to his home. So within 2 weeks, we flew to Seattle and we saw the boathouse. That's where he lives and where his private studio is. It's very unassuming. This is right across where the bridge is in Seattle. We got a wonderful tour. This is all the glass. They would make all the individual elements for his chandeliers and the big macchia bowls. And this is a single table made out of like 1,000-year-old tree. Yeah. And they said, Microsoft would rent the rooms, this room for conferences and things.
But you can see all those paintings there that he did laid out on that conference table. I was looking at them, getting very influenced.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. This is his private swimming pool in his residence. Just kind of a phenomenal. The glass is under plexiglass. You can swim over the top of it.
One thing that I really liked about him is all the color combination. I was always so influenced by color. So when we were doing stained glass, that was something that really was specific for us in our work, all the color.
This is an acrylic tub in the guest room in his home, and those are all acrylic chunks of color underneath the acrylic tub. And then, when we look at these pictures, we realize that, we're all influenced by Tiffany. It's just the color combinations and the way that he would mix colors. Going backwards a little bit, our first foray into stained glass flowers was this great big door that we did for a friend of Eric's who had a home out in Gaithersburg.
The thing I remember is Tom would make the pattern. So I was very into picking the colors of the glass and everything. And Tom was into making the patterns, making sure that every single line made sense. He loved the detail of the flowers you can see there, every single petal, lots of pieces in this.
There was 1,000 pieces in this 15-panel door. The ring saw had just come out where you could cut deep cuts into the glass, so you didn't need all those lines that always used to be in old stained glass windows where they had to cut it all by hand. We really like doing patterns where we could eliminate those lines. This is a iris in our yard.
Yeah, and one of the things that we were excited about when we moved from Falls Church to Bowie is that we could start growing these flowers. Looking at them very close, I love photographing close, the flowers and the colors and seeing the designs of the stamens and things.
We've loved spending years just developing our garden, and we fenced in a big area of it so that we could keep the deer out and so we can have flowers like this.
The rhododendrons here, yep. The lilac.
We love color in the yard, as you can see.
Roses.
The roses.
Tiger lilies.
Yep.
The spider lilies. These are raspberry hellebores that, bloom in the early part of the year. Passion flower. This is amazing. It's architectural. The designs are amazing. And of course, cherry blossoms. We lucked out when we got the house. We have 3 Kwanzaa cherry trees.
Hopefully this is the way it looks when you come in April, because this is an April shot. We were invited to do the Easter bonnet crawl in Rehoboth Beach 2 years ago. So Eric had to make an Easter bonnet, and this is his quite modest Easter bonnet.
Had to have flowers on it.
Yeah, so we had a lot of fun with that, making that in the studio.
Georgia O'Keeffe, big influence. I don't know if y'all are familiar with this 100 Flowers book, but it's huge. It's a huge book. She described really loving to be able to paint flowers so you could really see the inside. I noticed that's why I was so into taking pictures in the garden of the flowers up close. All the curves and the details. Very influenced by the
Yeah,
poppy.
her poppy was the most inspiration for us. Everyone remembers the stamp when that came out in 1996. And so we did it in stained glass. We drew the pattern ourselves, but we've seen lots of other people do that. That stamp was such an iconic one of her paintings.
And then if you look at the stamp, you can see all the different kinds of red and orange, coral colors. We would really try to reproduce that. One thing we would do is we would go to Nancy Weiser's stained glass store, the best stained glass store in the area, to find all the different kinds of glass, not just one kind of red, but many
Yeah,
different kinds.
and just cut out the best part of that sheet of glass to get the colors that we wanted. So those are poppies in our yard. They're kind of hard to grow, but when they do grow, they turn out really well. We took a class with Nancy called Painting with Light. Nancy convinced us to buy our first kiln. We bought it. This is on Christmas Day in 2002. We must have just had it for a couple months, maybe. Put it in our garage, got it to hook up. We had a lot of fun with this first kiln and a lot of experimenting. From here, we're going to jump 5 years because we have a woven glass poppy.
We made our poppy.
So, as you know, if you've heard any of our other talks, that it took us years to do the woven process. And that could be another whole discussion. And we'll talk more about it in April when you guys come to the studio. But this is the first flower that we made in our woven glass. And it was the first time we did our circular weave, where the weave obviously went around in a circle. We did the cast inclusion in the middle to represent all the pieces in the center of the red poppy. This was one of our ads that we put in a trade magazine to advertise the poppy and to get orders for it. We also adapted it. We had a client that wanted it on the wall, so we made this metal attachment that we could attach it to the wall. Then we had a client who wanted a yellow poppy. And instead of just doing a yellow poppy, we decided to make it a golden poppy, which is from California, which is where I was raised. So we made the golden poppy. This is about 19 inches across. It's about 8 pounds of glass. We had a lot of fun doing this. And we cast stems of flowers to get the shape at the bottom to make it look like a flower stem had been cut off. Arnold Howard of Paragon Kilns wrote an article about us in a Glass Art magazine, and they featured the poppy as well as a few other pieces. Sunflowers, that was our parrot Sydney. Our second flower we made was a sunflower. We debuted this at our Weiser Gallery show in 2009. And we really had a great time doing this with carving out all the edges. So we had that silhouette you see in the shadow. That was so important to have with a sunflower.
Yeah, and notice all the petals. It's like we don't want just one yellow. Lots of different variations.
Dichro and irid. Again, we cast an actual sunflower stems to make the feet on the bottom. And we wanted it kind of raised up so that it would have that. You could get the shadow if you lit it just right with a real good spotlight. Lotus we've always loved. We always love going to Kenilworth Gardens. If you guys haven't gone, it's fantastic in the spring. The amount of lotus that are there throughout the garden is really phenomenal. But we always love the shape of this flower. That's our lotus. It actually started out as a bougainvillea, and we thought it was too small of a piece, so we made another one and put it on the bottom. So we had 6 petals and turned it into a lotus. So we really love those plum colors. And the lotus is a plant that they paint on the elephants in India when they have parades and that. And we had a client that saw us on CBS Sunday Morning and called us, and they asked us if we could make an elephant. They'd seen our Georgia O'Keeffe white skull that we'd made in woven glass, and they asked if we could make an elephant. So we put our brains together and we started our sketching of what this Indian elephant would look like. And when we found out about the elephants being painted, we said, well, that's what we've got to do. So we did our own design on this elephant. That's the base glass we're drawing on. And then we finished him. He's 4 feet tall. And we debuted him also at Nancy Weiser's gallery show in 2009. There it is in the corner in the right-hand side.
And this was the only way that I wanted to do an elephant, because they were like, we want an elephant. All of our art's elephant. And I was like, it's got to be colorful.
This was
So
fun to engineer this and to figure out how to make the colors work and all those different grays that we put in it to make it an overall uniform color. But it's actually, there's lots of different colors of grays, whites, and some browns in there. Our first Washington, D.C. show was at Nancy's Gallery in 2009. There's Nancy and Sharon at our opening. It was November of 2009. And that's where we debuted the first kimono. So there's Eric showing
oh
it to
yeah.
folks. But so our kimonos, we made 4 of them, but we're only going to focus on the spring one tonight. In 2012, we were bringing the spring kimono to SOFA Chicago. SOFA stands for Sculptural Objects and Functional Art. So we did this sketch for the gallery, Pismo Gallery, who was taking us to SOFA to show what the kimono would look like. And then the sculpture we would put behind the kimono. We didn't bring the cranes. There's cherry blossoms on the kimono, the spring dawn kimono. These are the cherry trees in our yard. That gave us great inspiration.
Kwanzaa cherry trees.
Kwanzaa cherry,
a little bit
yeah.
different than the ones downtown.
Yep.
They bloom about 3 weeks later.
Yep. So Nancy was the model for our foil pattern for the kimono. So that's her standing behind it. But that's how we make up sculpture in foil first. And then we can take apart the foil and figure out how big the pieces we can make from that. So these are the 4 kimonos. The top row is the front of the kimono and the bottom row is the back of the kimono. The third kimono, the Spring Dawn, is the one that at the bottom, there are cherry blossom trees, trees in bloom. So there's the cherry tree in the bottom of the kimono and the shoes that go along with her. That's a little close up. Here's the back of the kimono. We were on the cover of the Smithsonian Associates magazine. They came that year and saw that kimono in the studio. We have a whole range of cherry blossoms on the bottom. It's both a nod to Japan and to our Washington, D.C. area that we live in. There's one of the trees up close, and people have asked us how we make them. And we pull threads, vitrograph. We make a brown out of mixtures of, what is it, blue, orange,
blue, gray, and orange.
Blue, gray, and orange to get this brown thread color. Pull it, and then we line them up on the kiln shelf to look like a tree. Cook that first. And then after it's baked together, we'll then powder on the pink frit to give that little bit of a blossom look. That's one of them separated. Oh, and then we melt them into the glass when we're weaving it. So they'll pop out.
And then we also did table sculptures for each of the kimonos. This is the table sculpture for the Spring Dawn kimono featuring all of the cherry blossoms.
We have so much great glass left over after we're done with the kimonos. We pulled that glass and we made one-of-a-kind table sculpture of each kimono. We're working on the first kimono table sculpture now. We set the glass aside, but the winter, the spring, and the summer table sculptures like this have all been sold and are in private collections. The spring kimono that has the cherry blossoms on it is in the Fort Wayne Museum of Art. It's on permanent exhibition there. The collectors donated it to the museum, and there she is in the entranceway.
In the glass wing.
In the glass wing. We installed her, it was a couple years ago. Yeah, so we were thrilled. The 4th kimono is in the Low Art Museum in Miami on permanent display. So if you're in Miami and you go to the University of Miami, the Low Art Museum has that kimono. And this one's in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So now the cherry branch behind this one, whenever we would take the kimono to SOFA, we wanted to have another big sculpture behind it just to make more drama in the space. It's a 7-foot branch. We mocked it up in paper. We had this during one of our tours and showing what we were going to make in the future. And that's it on the wall of our studio. We first have to make it in foil. This is just crumpled up foil to kind of get a sense of the size of it. We have a metal structure made that has all the individual pieces that will link off of it. We then wrap foil around the metal to get the actual pattern sizes that we're going to make of each of the branches. And then that's the entire branch made all put together. So each of those pieces is a different piece of woven glass.
And again, lots of different browns.
Yep. We wanted the branch to be dramatic and also be woven, and 50 different hues of brown in the branch. And so then we had to make the cherry blossoms. So these are about the size of your palm. And we design how much we're going to put dichro in it, or the transparent glass, or the opaque. And so we made 66 Oh, we actually made more than that, but we put 66 on it. We made all the flowers. That just takes a long time, but each of the flowers is different. They're all shaped differently. They all have different centers in them. The weaves are different. So those are close-ups of them. Then they all were attached to the 7-foot branch. And there is our cherry blossom branch. And then we had it photographed for an ad. One of the details we put in one of the flowers, you see the little beetle that's in there. So he's hidden. It's just a tiny, you'd have to know where to look to find him in there. So we took the cherry branch and that kimono, the spring dawn kimono, to SOFA in 2012. Had a fantastic time there. The kimono sold, but the cherry branch didn't. So we took it up to Pismo Gallery in Denver. I took it home and then took it up to Aspen. And we went to Aspen to install it in the Aspen Pismo Galleries. And it was there for a month, I think. And then Pismo wanted us to take it to it's in Florida, West Palm show. And that's where it sold. And then that's us packing it up. We wrap each flower in its own heavy plastic bag and then take it apart. Each goes in its own boxes. Here's the client's home. We were told we had to install it in a spiral staircase. So this was quite challenging. We put the pattern on the wall. It was too low, so we made the pattern higher. We had to go rent ladders from Home Depot and boards to flatten out the floor on the stairs. So there we are installing it piece by piece. So then at the bottom of the staircase, as you go up, this is how it looks. And that's at the top. We had some leftover flowers. So we saved them, and years later, we attached them to one of our kites. So we wove a flower in the fabric of the kite, and then we put another flower on top of it. So that's a sculpture. So it would sort of have a 3D effect. So this is the cherry bud kite. We did 3 kites in this series. So we did cherry blossom, which has 2. So there's 1 bloom, 2 blooms, and then there's the close-up of
and the greens coming in.
Yeah, that's right. It's all sky because it's just the buds. Now the leaves are starting to come in. So this one's called cherry blossom. And then there's close-ups of that. And then the third one is this one. It's all green, hardly any sky, cherry bloom, we call this one. And these 3 are in our gallery in Florida. And I believe the second one just sold. That one just sold to a client who has 2 other kites of ours. You can see there the 3D effect of having the flowers on top. So that's all 3 of them in our gallery. And then there's the dragonfly that Nikki loves so much in our gallery. So we had them photographed here before we shipped them down to our Florida gallery in Sarasota. So
and the moonflower.
The moonflower kite. We did these out of order, but the moonflower kite, this is what the buds look like. Moonflowers only bloom at night. If you go out early in the morning, you can see the whole flower. Otherwise, it closes up like this during the day. But we made a moonflower. Nancy Weiser had given us all this black vitrograph that she had pulled for sculptures that she makes, her giant sculptures. And we said, well, let's try to apply that on the surface of the weave. We made these strips with silver foil so they would fume. And we love the color of them. They just read night to us. We put the branch together with all these little vitrograph stringers, fused it onto our weave, and we loved the way it turned out. The lower flower is woven into the fabric. The upper flower is attached afterwards, so it has a 3D effect.
And the cool thing about that fuming process, it does turn some yellow as part of that reaction. That was kind of cool because that is in the moonflower. It's some of that yellow hue. That's another reason why it made sense for us to do that.
We did this one, and because it worked, we were able to do these. You see, it's the same branch pattern. We really liked the way that branch pattern worked. We were able to use the black vitrograph to give a test to see if the brown would work on our cherry blossoms. So that was fantastic. So now we're at our spring dogwood. This is our yard with we have several dogwoods in the yard as well that we love. The Ritz-Carlton in Virginia, their flagship properties in Tyson's Corner, they asked us as Virginia artists in 2011 to do the Virginia dogwood, which is the tree of the state. This is the tree and the flower, I think, of Virginia.
Yeah, so you can see the wisteria in the background there,
Yep.
that dogwood down playing in the dirt. And we would do fun things like you see that bird cage that we put a fern in growing out of.
Just trying to dress up the yard.
Yeah.
The Ritz-Carlton, they asked us to do a dogwood. We submitted this drawing to them. They rejected it. They said that it looked like rosebuds. So we redid the drawing and we made the flowers much bigger. They approved this. So then we went to visit the site. We realized that the background was all brown. The way this is, you see the breaks in the different tiles, those lines would also be brown. So the brown branch would be obscured by the brown wood behind the other pieces. So that's what it was going to look like above the fireplace. So we went back to the drawing board and Eric said, why don't we make the negative space the branch? We redesigned the tiles.
Again, just like in stained glass, we don't like extra lines that don't make sense.
In the meantime, they put a hold on the project for a while, the renovation of the lobby, and we moved here. So this was the first project we did in with one kiln. We had one GL24 kiln in our home before. It took us a year to get our 800 amps to our house to get all of our kilns hooked up. So we only had one kiln that we could use, and we did this entire sculpture in that 6 months that we first moved in here. So this is us mocking up the flowers, where they might go on the different branches. You can see the red lines are the old pattern, and then the new pattern where we were going to weave the brown branch into it. You guys have done this, I'm sure, put Fred on a shelf and heat them up into little balls. So this is what we did to do all the centers of the flowers. We did our test flower, and we really liked the way it looked. The dogwood has those little we call them the burnt edges, on the 4 petals. So we did a little brown slurry, and we would paint that on there on each of the petals to, I thought I had a picture of it here. Oh, there he is. Yeah, you can see how each of the dogwoods always has that little burnt area on it. So we wanted to make sure that we did that with each of the flowers. There are different sizes that we did of the flowers. There's 83 flowers. Here's the panels that we did in green. I think there was maybe 80 different greens. I wrote that down here that we'd made to do the greens. They sort of look flat, but when we lit them from the side, you can see how undulating they are. We really liked a lot of the movement. And there's more blue at the top than there is at the bottom. So we designed this for the branch. The negative space is the branch as is coming out at you. So the bigger flowers are at the bottom and the smaller flowers are at the top. So then we made all of our 83 flowers, made them based on the patterns we made for each one. And that's the template put in the Ritz-Carlton lobby. And then there is the professional shot. We're thrilled with how that turned out. And that was the shot they had on their website advertising their newly renovated lobby.
Which they renovate every 10 years.
So there it is again. You see on the bottom left-hand corner, we put this on the wall to say what the name of the sculpture is and who made it and the year. So luckily we did this. So there's a good note to all of you if you do any public installations. Make sure your name is on it somewhere, because it's hard to sign a big piece like that with an etching or something. So we had put this plaque, we just stuck it to the wood. And 3 years ago, a contractor called Sharon at Weiser Glass and said, the lobby's being redecorated. We looked up Markow Norris's website. We saw that you're the gallery in the area, and we want to know what we should do with this piece. Sharon got in touch with us, and we called the contractor, and we got the piece back. We invited him and his whole family over to the house. They made the big glass rocks we were talking about earlier out of scrap glass, and we had a fun day of glass projects in the studio. We installed the piece in our home. We realized the negative space doesn't work with that color wall, so we had to paint the wall brown. It was in the Ritz-Carlton lobby for 10 years, and we're thrilled to have it back. We now get to enjoy it again. But this is where you can see the big flowers are at the bottom and the smaller flowers are at the top. Oh, there's the dragonfly. So that's in the gallery right now.
We have been working on the Samurai Warriors. We have 5 planned. Each one of them has a flower and some kind of fierce animal to kind of be the yin and yang. So the fire samurai, the dragon with the sunflower, the water samurai, the koi fish with the lotus flower, the earth samurai with the tiger and the chrysanthemum, the wind samurai with the dragonfly and the cherry blossoms, of course. And the sky samurai is going to have the hawk and the eggplant blossom. We have done a lot of work on the fire one.
So we did this sketch for the Smithsonian was doing a tour, and we told them they would see most of this, and we didn't have it made though. So we had to do a sketch so that they could put this in the magazine to see what it was that we were working on. So here's the drawing of the dragon on the back of the fire samurai holding a sunflower, and there's the actual back armor with the dragon. There he is breathing out his fire. The skin we were really proud of. That took a lot of silver fuming to get the skin to look that sort of mottled color, that blue and brown look. There is a little more close up. You can see the fuming on his upper teeth. They were white, but they fumed out, which we thought looked great. Having sort of yellowish teeth. So then he's holding the sunflower, and we beaded that. So there's a close up of the beaded sunflower on the back of the Fire Samurai. And if you haven't seen him in person, definitely come in April and you'll see him. The front of the samurai is the tail of the dragon with the sunflower going over the shoulder. So there's the actual piece that we wove together. You can see his back claws and his tail and the sunflower over his chest. And that's the sunflower that we use the same colors and sort of the same design of the petals to reproduce the flower in his body. So here's the front and the back. So you can see the whole dragon wraps around his waist. And then here's the calf, has the dragon's claw and a sunflower. And that's the stalks of the sunflower with leaves on his calf, the front and back of the calf. The Mons is like the family crest on the back of their wrist. So we just rolled over some Dichro and made all these little individual balls for the center. And then we wanted it to look like we used little pieces of stringer, and then we fused it on. We wanted it to look like a stitched sunflower. And so that's it attached to the back of the palm of the armor. It's the family crest of the sunflower. And it's basically a field of sunflowers at the bottom.
And the bougainvillea, I don't know how many of you have been to the Caribbean or down in the tropics. As we started traveling, I would see these beautiful colored bougainvillea flowers, thinking, what is this plant? It is a bougainvillea. You see the fuchsia there, very popular for bougainvilleas. This is a close-up of the bougainvillea. Flower is actually the white part, and then the petals of the flower, or the leaves, actually.
It's called a bract. It's a colored leaf.
But that color is very specific. You don't see a lot of fuchsia out there in nature. So it attracted us immensely.
Well, we've always loved bougainvilleas. We have a client who asked us if we could make a bougainvillea vine. He saw the spring dogwood, said, can you do a bougainvillea vine for my wife's birthday for a surprise sculpture? And we said, sure. We went and we consulted. We went over to their house while she was gone, and we made all these flowers out of paper so that we could mock them up on the wall. And we decided, instead of confining the bougainvillea in a square like the dogwood was, because that was confined to above a fireplace, we discovered in their home that they had a beautiful kitchen wall that we could make the bougainvillea spread out and actually grow. So we taped all these 100 flowers on the wall to get a sense for the scale and the size that they would be. And he approved it. He said, yes, that's a great idea. So, get busy on working on those. So we got our drawing board like we always do and start to figure out what colors are going to work.
And I'm like, how are we going to make fuchsia?
It turned out to be a very tricky color. Took us months and months to get the colors, but we do all these test samples.
But as y'all know, fuchsia, that color has gold in it, and it makes it very expensive and difficult if you mess up something, if you hold it the wrong temperature.
These are all our test samples that we do to see if we want to make a larger piece. The Dichro, sometimes we put powder on the Dichro, we put transparent on top of the Dichro. And then these are our color bars in our coffin kiln, different treatments to the glass to try to get different colors. Some of our colors went too dark. And as you know, you experiment.
Yeah, because we made a lot of colors and some of them turned to plum for what we wanted to do.
We make these colors, and then some of the pinks will turn even darker when you fire them. There's some threads we pulled underneath as well. I probably put too many of these in. Okay, so there's a bunch of Dichros and pinks. So then we had to figure out how to make those little flowers, the actual flower inside the bougainvillea leaves. So we tried these little frit powder piles and a little dot on the top of a brown piece of red. It didn't look good. So we made a stencil, and we used the sifter, and we sifted white powder through the stencil, and then put a tiny piece of spring green in the middle of it. And we tried different shapes and different way they would look. And then you have to fire when you do a frit. You have to fire if you want to get it to have sort of a very delicate look. You can't fire it too hot. They came out like this. A little rough around the edges. We thought they didn't have the detail we really wanted. These were the first two flowers that we made to see if we liked the shape or if it was the right size with the 6 different petals. And you'll notice that the little flowers inside they're really kind of rough. We didn't like the frayed edges and they were too thick. They weren't exactly what we wanted. So we went back to the drawing board. We sifted them much thinner. And then once we fired them, we would take a tweezers and break off all the little edges and then once we cleaned them, dried them out, put them on, they looked beautiful. And if we got them thin enough, they would curl up around each of the petals. So they would look like a flower rather than this one. This is one where if they're too thick, they're just flat and they look sort of blobby. So we were very happy that we figured out how to do that and make those as accurate as we could. Then we of course, had to make the green for the leaves. There's our first leaf that we tried and our base glass that we're trying sizes on. Our first leaf. There's the first 2. These were too plum. The first 9 we made were like, they just weren't the right color.
It's hard to get fuchsia. Very hard.
Yep. So you can see that they didn't match at all. They were just too dull. I mean, they were pretty on their own if they were lit really well, but again, they were just too dull. They weren't going to work. So back to the drawing board and trying to figure out. We made another set, still didn't work. So we had 16 of them that just were not the right color. We kept working, ordered more dichro glass, tried other powders, mixing other sheets of glass together, and we got them to be, these were our first 9 that turned out really nicely. Just a really crisp fuchsia that we were looking for. We just really wanted that brightness. Yeah, we were very happy. Then we made a bunch of leaves that we needed to make. And let's see, we made 140 of the pink flowers. Remember, we put them on their wall. It was going to be abstract. But as the more we looked at this, we thought they looked like butterflies. So we needed to ground this. We mocked up a cardboard vine for the bottom, and then we did the sketch. And then, of course, we had to figure out how to hang these flowers on the wall. We wanted the fixture to be really a part of the sculpture and be as beautiful as the sculpture. We knew we had to incorporate a personal design. So got our graph paper out and started drawing all of our things and got our graphic designer to 3D mock it up. He would send us files like this and we could zoom it around to see if this is going to work, if it's going to be the right size. And then we would just go back and forth with him like, nope, that's not right. Let's change this. Let's change that. Print them out. This is really a hard, real quick print. There's the clay ones on the business card and then the plastic ones are printed out. Lots of back and forth with the 3D printer and with the design. We found these screws that would work. So we had to, mock those into the thing, make sure a quarter would fit in the middle so there would be some clearance, even mock it up so that the printer could print them all out, in one fell swoop. We didn't want to use plastic. We had to use aluminum because the plastic will rot over time, and will break. But we did them in different colors. These were all just test samples to see what fixture would look good on the back of the.
And this was important because all before, like even the sculpture behind us, it's on a background, but this is the first sculpture where it's the flower itself. You've got a good attachment to the wall for that individual flower.
So we shaped it differently. We did these 3D prints, and then these were our tests. We had a flat one at the bottom, which we didn't like. It didn't look right. So we curved them in. You can see how they fit the bottom of the flower better. We also designed the base. This is one we designed for the leaf because the leaf didn't need the 3 petals. We had some of them printed in aluminum. Then we sent them to our anodizer in Ohio so they could make them that green color at the bottom. Well, they use powder in the aluminum 3D printing process, and the powder won't take the anodization. So when they tried to anodize the silver one at the top, it just turned to that dark gray at the bottom. We were like, uh-oh, that's not going to work. So we had to find paint. And we had to hand spray paint all of them. But the paint we found that was the right color was glossy, which we didn't want. So we then had to paint it with a matte finish on top of it. And then we even redesigned the back of the fixture so it would fit into the groove. So there's all 3. There's the aluminum first one we made, the aluminums we tried to anodize, and then on the right-hand side are the new plastic ones that with the new star backing that would fit so we could prop them in 8 different positions. So that's all the different iterations it went through to get the final product. And so then there we are painting them. We've got to paint 300 of these pieces. We found these great clips that go in a wall. You don't need to drill a hole. And then when you put the screw in, it splits it so that the fixture would just rest right on the wall. It was very easy to install them. So then we had to fix them to the flowers. We used a brown silicone we could get at Home Depot, but it didn't work. We didn't like how when it oozed out, it looked brown. So we had our silicone custom tinted green. So it matched the green paint that we were using so that when they were attached, if it did ooze out, it would still look good. This is how you can see how important it was that the fixture looks good because you can see it from the side. So we wanted to make sure that it really looked part of the, like a leaf that's holding the flower onto the wall. Then we glued them all on, got them all ready. Then we did all the leaves. We did a different fixture for the leaves because they didn't need the 3 petals. Remember, we did the cardboard mock-up of the vine. There's the vine. We wove the vine in brown glass. We made a metal structure for it that attaches to the wall, and then the vine can attach to that first. And then we mocked it up in our house with the paper and the cardboard. This is the final sculpture that's professionally photographed. So it's 2 stories in our entryway, and there's the vine, and you can see the dragonfly in the gallery. And there is it from the side. There is another shot coming up the stairs. And you can see we put the plum ones at the very top. So when you're downstairs, you don't really notice them, but you can see the difference in the plum ones on the left-hand side as opposed to the fuchsia ones that we really wanted. So here's the close-up. So here's how the flowers turned out. We're really happy with them. Some of the bougainvillea have 3, some of them have 2, some have 1, depending on what's blooming at the time. Oh, there's our photographer. If you don't have your work professionally photographed and it's large, we would suggest doing that. It's very important, we think, to have those images. So there it is again. This is the red bougainvillea. We asked John what his wife's favorite color was, and he said red. So we were going to make 5 red flowers. There they are. And we were going to just hide the best one of them, in the 100 flowers that they purchased for their house. Well, we got to thinking that we are going to have to take 100 of these flowers off our wall, take them to their house, install them, and then make another 100 flowers to replace these. And we said, well, maybe she wants it in red. We have to make 100 flowers either way. So we took the red flowers over, showed them to Annabella and said, would you rather have the whole vine in red? She goes, yep. So we went back to our research. That bougainvillea, we found out, comes in lots of different colors. The red one's quite dramatic, and that's her favorite color. Lots of red in her kitchen. We had already done the red in so many things, so that made it a lot easier for us. We didn't have to do all the experimenting anymore with our reds because the dragonfly, our samurai, the feathers we've done lots of reds. So there we are making our reds. So she was fine with us taking another 6 months to redo the red one. There's our test samples using dichro, using irid glass, our fuses, pulling threads that we'll use to weave out of the vitrograph. There's the 100 red flowers that we made in the studio. This is fun. After we installed it in their home, we held up the original drawing, and then it'll reveal the sculpture. That's the sculpture in their home. So there's the professional shot with their kitty, Smokey.
Kitty cat down.
Kitty cat at the bottom. We're very happy with how this turned out. Just really fun. In the center of this picture, there's a ladybug. We hid a ladybug in one of the flowers. Of course, Annabella found it right away. So that's across the top of the door. That's the 3 rooms of the kitchen, dining room, and family room in their house that has the red bougainvillea. And they framed the sketch that we drew for them, and that's also on the wall in their home. So we're really happy about that. So that is our flower story.
Well, thank you. That's absolutely delightful. Folks, if you want to add your comments or questions in the chat, or just speak up now by unmuting. I'm not sure I can see everyone. I'll read a few of the comments from the chat for you in case you can't see it. Liz says, dang, I made fuchsia for an outdoor pizza oven. Wish I'd known of your endeavor at the time. I laugh out loud. You guys are masters. And of course, Betty's wonderful, stunning Spectacular. I love the description of your process. And
Thank
I
you.
have a question for you. I'm only 5 years into glass, so
Ah,
I'm not as technical as all of you here. But I was wondering if you could explain what you mean by the fuming process.
One of the things when we were showing you the moonflower, we like to use silver foil. So we'll actually put silver foil on certain glasses, and there's a reaction that takes place, and the fuming of that reaction of the silver on top of the glass will create this really cool like cloud that will mark the glass very colorful. That's so the fuming that takes place during the reaction will color the glass and stain it in a way. And we like the organic nature of those colors that happen as part of the reaction that takes place.
you see the
Mhm.
variation of colors. You have to sort of back calculate how much you want of silver you want to put on, because every time you fire it, it will fume more. And if you put too much silver on to start with, and you're going to fire it, say 3 times, you might blow out the whole color of the original glass.
This
That's
is where, and I think Nikki, you probably agree, it's like where you love the unexpected space here. Like you don't know what's going to
yeah.
happen a lot of
Mhm.
times with this silver fuming, and so you like to experiment around.
So
Yeah,
that's uncapped, right? If the
yeah,
silver's on top without
yeah.
another
Oh,
piece
yes.
of glass on
If
top.
you cap it, then it won't fume.
Yeah,
It might react with the glass that it's touching, but it won't fume the same way because it's literally the molecules of the silver are separating from
Breaking
the
point.
metal and landing on the glass and reacting with it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
so Bullseye did this glass series called Reactive Cloud and Reactive Ice,
Mhm.
specifically used with silver to be able to have that reaction take place.
Let me add a little bit of that to that. You can also use silver compounds, and I've experimented a lot with silver nitrate with different concentrations, from 1 to 20%. And you can get the same fuming effects and have a little more control by the concentration of the silver nitrate as it's dissolved in water.
If y'all come to the studio in April, I'll point out different pieces where we've used the silver very effectively.
Thank you. Let me share with you a few more comments. Just wow, this was so awesome. Your work is beyond fabulous. Irene says, amazing work, so inspirational. Thank you for sharing. And Margaret adds, thank you for this amazing presentation. Karen says, so beautiful and great seeing the sampling you did. Extraordinary. Thank you so much. Jude says, so impressive. Thank you so much for sharing. And Sarah adds, so much attention to detail. Jean, are there certain glasses that react to fuming
Yeah,
better
so
than
like
others?
yeah, like I was saying, that reactive cloud, reactive ice from Bullseye, also anything that has sulfur in it will react.
Mm.
So like the yellows and the oranges and things like that.
Vicky says, incredible amount of detail research. Thank you for sharing. Doris adds, do you dedicate a kiln to the fuming?
Oh, that's a good question. That's
No,
very
but
good.
no, we
Yeah.
haven't done counts, but you
Yeah.
definitely have to make sure you know what's going on with your shelving.
Yeah. If it gets on the shelf, you don't want to use other colors on that shelf.
Yeah,
That's
it
yeah.
will make a footprint, what I call it, on the kiln shelf, and it will implant it on the next piece of glass.
Yeah.
And so you'll get a brown where you don't expect it.
Oh.
You have to mark the shelf.
What's the date in April for the in-person tour?
Yep. April 19.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, mark your
Yeah.
1
calendars,
o'clock.
folks. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll be sending out the invite and folks can respond to that. Here's another question for you. You must have a complete library of notes when you make new colors. How do you keep them?
Binders. We have lots of binders there. We don't have a super organized way, but we have multiple binders around the studio that we can just write in. But then if we're taking notes, Eric's usually writing those on separate pieces of paper that we put in a binder that we might keep in folders. It's not perfectly organized, but we pretty much know where everything is. But we do have thousands of pages of notes that we've had to keep organized.
Yeah, and I
Mm-hmm.
also like to create little 2-inch tiles for everything. We've got hundreds and hundreds of tiles tiles of different color.
Where the numbers are written on it, what colors were in it,
Yeah.
maybe what temperature it was cooked at, something like that.
I wanted to computerize it all, and I'm like, no, I like my paper, I like my notebook.
I'll share with you a little trick I use. I use a little app called Genius Scan, which allows you to take a photo and edit it, and you can save it as JPEG or PDF, but you can annotate it and put it into a bunch of folders. I'm kind of lazy, and so I take photos of everything in my kiln and everything I'm doing because I just don't like to write it all
You
down.
do too,
But
yeah.
you can write it on those things, and you can go back to what you've
That's a
got.
good idea.
But
What's
it's
it
a
called?
wonderful app. It's
What's it
called
called?
Genius Scan. It's a little orange shutter image.
We take lots of pictures, and yes, I often sometimes will print out the picture to put with the note. But you're right. If you could just write on the picture, even if I print it out, it's all the notes are already there. Yeah. Great idea.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Hi, Jean.
Jean, how are
Hey,
you?
Jean.
Good to see old friends.
We still have the NCAGG award, but we got the Jean made. Yeah, it's hanging in the studio. That's awesome. Oh, hi, Sherry.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Here's another comment for you. So great to see and hear you too. This is from Liz Braun. I would love to come back to your house in April if I possibly can. Keep up the fabulous creativity. I thank you so much. It has been stunning and informative, and we really appreciate you're giving us, the behind the scenes information.
Our
it's
pleasure.
delightful.
Our pleasure.
It's been wonderful.
It's nice talking with artists. It's nice knowing that we actually can go into more detail about things that maybe other folks wouldn't know or care about, but also that we know you guys get a lot of what it is we're doing. You can see the work that goes into it because you guys are doing it yourselves.
We appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Guys,
Thank you so much. It's been
Yeah.
wonderful.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. See you in April.